Good morning and welcome to the first edition of Help Awaken. My name is Garhen and we're here for the next hour to answer any question you may have. So we're going to just give some time for people to come on board and see what happens today. This is going to grow over time, and that's the case. It'll take some time for people to find out. And I ask that you share this with others. If there's people you know who need help, need someone to talk to, need some advice, I'll talk a little bit about myself here in the upcoming minutes and the like, and we will continue this on momentarily. I'll put you back to the opening and graphic and music for a minute or two, and then we shall return. Hello again, my name is Garhen, and we're just going to stay on live here, and this is our first time that we're doing this. We are working through a few technical details, so we'll just work with us as we are going through that. And the live chat should be integrated online, and that should be showing up in the box on the right-hand side, but we'll actually see how that functions here shortly. It's a beautiful Sunday morning where we are. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and before I do that, I'm just going to actually check that I can post in the chat as well, although to be honest, I'll be doing most of mine through the speaking. And it looks like we have success. That's a beautiful thing. It really is. That's nice to see. So good morning, everyone, and much love. And again, my name is Garhen, and we're going to be here for this hour every single Sunday from 10 to 11 Pacific Standard Time. And the goal is to encourage people to come for help, come for advice. And as I've mentioned before, it takes courage. It takes stepping through your fears to reach out to other people around you and say, hey, there's something going on in my life right now that I'm having a hard time handling. And we are all one. I know it can seem so frightening to reach out to others. What are they going to think about you? What are your friends going to think about you? What is anyone going to think about you? And the bottom line is it doesn't really matter. What matters is what you think about you. I can tell you that for me, I see every human being as one of the shards of the mirror of consciousness of all creation. Each one a droplet in the infinite sea of consciousness that we all are. This is a beautiful thing to me. And when we exhibit courage, when we walk through our fear, when we put ourselves out there, that courage, that strength of character lends additional strength, additional courage to those who may not have it, and encourages them to step forward as well. This is the true beauty of the oneness of us as a whole. We have the ability to start a wave of compassion and a wave of empathy and love across the entire globe. We have that capacity. We have it at a technological level. We have it at an emotional level. And we have it at a spiritual level already. We've always had it. I see my wife can actually log in from the other side. Good to see. That means things are working the way they should. And the purpose of, doing the chat online, of course, or on screen, is so that there's actually a record for people to be able to go back and say, hey, that's the same question I had, and gain some wisdom from it. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm just like you. I'm a powerful spiritual being here pretending to be human for a short period of time. I can tell you that I have fond memories of over 3,280 years of existence in one form or another. Not as this entity. When we talk about reincarnation, it's a common error to think, I have had many past lives. I being the current egoic being that goes by the label Garhen, which of course doesn't really exist. That is a manifested hard drive. It takes in all the experiences, all of them, and that returns back to the source, your higher self, that which is manifesting all of the different consciousnesses of you, the real you. Not that small false sense of self that you think you are, not your name, but so much more than that. I do understand it's going to take some people to come online today, and I am committed to spend the hour here. If it means no comments for the first couple of weeks, that's fine. No one to help. Eventually, people will find it and they will come. This is one of the things that I talk about many times, okay, the difference between faith and belief. And, this is Sunday. It's probably a really good day to cover over a few things. And, I'm a really open-minded guy. I really am. And everyone is on their path. Whether you think you're on a path or not, you're on the path. And all paths lead home. All paths lead back to that infinite sea of consciousness. You see, we would believe sitting down here on this tiny little speck of a planet, it's actually a rather nondescript planet, but for the fact of the water and the positioning from the sun, there's hundreds of millions like this one. We live in the arm of a rather nondescript spiral galaxy that measures 100,000 light years across. Light from the sun, which is 93 million miles away from here, takes 8 minutes to get here. Imagine the distance we're talking about when we say the distance it takes light to travel in 100,000 years, not 8 minutes. That's how big this nondescript galaxy that we live in is. One galaxy out of hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of them. Trillions upon trillions of planets. Hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of civilizations, all in various states of evolution in this glorious dance of the one sea of creation, the one infinite sea of consciousness that we would term God, Allah. It doesn't really matter what name you call it. This is the gift that we are here to remember while we're here, to become consciously aware of our connectivity to the whole and to feel that conscious connectivity in every aspect of our lives, to indeed become conscious creators. We are creators in training. In one of the rare parts of the Bible that the Roman emperors first council and then later the Council of Nicaea and again by papal order or papal edict, a few of the parts of the Bible have not been raped and pillaged for the truth. But one of the things that they could not take out of there was Christ's reminder to us all that we will do greater works than even him. That we are gods. We are part and parcel of the creative essence. The point of Christ on this Sunday when we talk about having a service, for example, okay? And we have to talk about that for a minute so we're clear. It was never Sunday that religious services were set on. It was never. That came about as an integration of the worship of the Roman gods, the pantheon of gods, okay, one of them being Saturn, okay, and then also the sun, Ra, the sun god. In order to sort of smooth the transition over, they chose Sunday as the day of worship. You see, when we, one of the biggest issues we have is this schism and division that organized religion creates. And my wife goes through this, is still going through this with her family after 3.5 years. Their conservative fundamental Christian viewpoint and belief is that, they only worship a God of love. And that God of love somehow gives you a choice. Although really, is it a choice? Is it a choice to say, worship me and accept my son or go to hell? Is that a choice? Let me think about that one. What's it like in hell? The concept that represents free will, or the concept that represents a loving God, is laughable at best. It really is. If you look at the God of the Old Testament, he's an egotistical bastard. He's not a loving God. If he doesn't like you, he'll smite you. If he doesn't like the whole city, women and children, innocents, all of it combined, he'll arrange to have someone destroy it, or he'll destroy it. We were listening to Carlton Pearson a little bit yesterday. My wife has a connection with Carlton Pearson. She'll talk about that one day maybe, and we're looking forward to his upcoming documentary that'll be released on Netflix called Come Sunday, and I believe that is on April 18th. And in listening to him yesterday, he knows his Bible, and so do I. I studied ancient religions and philosophies in university. I have an eidetic memory, as a matter of fact. So, I don't know, some 30,000 books that I've taken in over my lifetime. I pretty much have them all page for page and word for word. It's kind of like having a walking library, according to my wife. She enjoys it most of the time. Most of the time. Right, honey? Yep, sometimes. But Carlton Pearson, he was speaking about the Israelites and how God hardened the Pharaoh's heart. So the Israelites were all suffering. And Moses was trying to make pleas to let them go. And God hardened the Pharaoh's heart. Why? So he could visit all the plagues and put on his full show. Do as much damage as possible. Leave the Egyptians something to remember before finally letting the Israelites go. And, when you really look at it, as Carlton was saying, when you look at it closely, this was not a God of love. This was a God of fear and wrath and trembling and thunder on the mountain and commandments. Doesn't sound like a loving deity. That same loving deity in Isaiah gets fed up with the human race and says, crush them all underfoot. They're not worthy. I don't know that God. The creative essence of all things that I know as my creator, and I visited that Creator in two death experiences, okay, where I was dead twice on the operating table. Two separate times in my life. The first time, I had a hate-on for God like you would not believe. Why? Because the Catholic Church, despite my mother being a lifelong Catholic, refused to bury her because she committed suicide, finally giving up on the pain of her illness and not being able to take it anymore. As a young man, I looked at that and I hated God for it. I figured, well, I'd been taught as a young Catholic boy. I was raised as an altar boy, to love the church, and the priests were the ultimate authority, ordained by God to deliver God's message to us. And if this was the message that her God was delivering, I didn't want any part of him or it. The first time I died, I was chomping at the bit to get across to the other side. I had visions. I was a soldier. Okay, you have to understand. And I had no fear of death. I just knew when I got over there I was going to raise hell on in heaven. But I was met with a loving presence that had no judgment. And I came to understand that in the same way we would not judge or beat a baby for spilling milk, we are, as a species, hardly even in the door to play school for the first time. In relation to some of the more highly developed conscious beings within our universe, within our own galaxy, we are barely sentient yet. What creator, after a 13.8 billion year old universe, would condemn a race of beings that's only been around for thousands of years? Tens of thousands of years. It is not the Creator that condemns. It is we as egoic beings who have the need to condemn, and therefore the need to have a Creator who will condemn. Because if your Creator won't condemn you, how can anyone else condemn you? I see the judgment of the Christians in my wife's family. It's funny, I thought in your faith that God was the judge. But apparently, in your arrogance, you would assume that you would know the mind of the Creator. Interesting. Interesting story. Where does Christ fit in our picture as a civilization? If you haven't watched the video on Jesus Christ, there's a great video on our Awaken the World YouTube page. It's also available from our Awaken the World Facebook page and group. It's a fantastic little video. The Christians would like to think that they somehow bought or own Christ. And, Christ was a Jew. He was never a Christian. He never agreed with, nor did he ask anyone to start any sort of a church. He was totally against the organized, hypocritical religion. He saw it firsthand. I always chuckle that churches do bingo in the basement, and other games of chance. And I'm always reminded of the temple and the experience that Christ had when he lost it in the temple. and threw over the tables of the money changers and chased the animals out and whipped them. This is the state that the so-called temple of Christianity has become. If Christ were here today, I would believe he would take up that same whip, metaphorically, and chase you all out of your pews, and chase you all out of your stained-glassed buildings that you show up to once a week, to spend an hour congratulating yourselves on the fact that as long as you keep asking forgiveness for doing the same thing over and over again, you'll get to heaven. But I know you better than that. I know deep in the psyche of every single Christian, there is a seed of worry and fear and doubt that, despite what you may think, you're not going to get to go to heaven. And you know what? Personally, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Because, if you're going to spend the rest of eternity on your knees on gold streets, which would be really uncomfortable, worshiping some deity that needs your love, needs your affection, needs your worship, that's not living. That would be true death. Luckily, something we can never experience. In my journey across the veil to the other side, the God that I encountered was not male nor female, was the absolute, was everything and all things. The feeling of absolute comfort, of absolute pure and perfect, non-judgmental, non-conditional, totally open and awestruck, wonderful love. In this human realm, the word love simply does the feeling no service. It really does not. And it was in this love that everything was revealed to me. I was taken above the earth, and the clouds parted, and I saw the earth laid out as if someone had taken the globe and turned it into one long valley, and all of humanity was present in the valley. Everyone doing their own little thing. In some parts of the valley, I could see little cooking fires and huts where the Himalayas had been unrolled. Could see the Mongoli yurts. The oceans became long lakes on the floor of the valley. Cities laid out in long strips. People still typing away at typewriters, doing their things. There wasn't the internet back then. Nor were there cell phones, come to think of it. If you needed to make a phone call, you had to have change and a payphone. That was really about it. And in that picture, and in that valley I saw that was laid out of the whole earth, I felt the collective ego of the planet, of all of humanity, not the planet, of all of humanity, and all the individual. I could literally hear the thoughts. I could feel them, could sense them. And one of the gifts that I came back with after that first experience was the ability to instantly discern the interior being of someone else within seconds of being within their energy field. I can't tell you the number of people who have ran in terror at realizing that I do that. These are the people who claim to be afraid of me. What they're really afraid of course, is what they try to hide from themselves. These are the things that we fear the most. You know, and I want to let you in on a little secret. If you can work your way through your fears, if you can learn to go past your fears, you will find your own strength and power again. It will return to you. You see, you were born with it. You came in through your mother's womb or through a test tube or however you got here, okay? Implantation, it doesn't really matter. You came here as a powerful spiritual being, prepared and willing to engage in a human experience, not to learn anything, but to provide another unique view of the whole of creation, the Creator looking back upon its creation and itself in a one-of-a-kind, totally unique lens that you would call you. This is the gift of why we were here. This is the reason why we exist. And as we grew up, we began to believe all the things that we were told, whether we were aware of it or not. We began to believe that we were not powerful, that we needed things outside of ourselves to feel whole, to be whole. And so the cycle starts and continues. Another whole generation of children raised up in the idea that the best thing they could possibly do is start to buy and gather things to feel good. And this is the normal cycle of our society. By the time you get into your 60s, you realize what a colossal waste of time it's all been, and you start throwing it all away or getting rid of it as fast as you can. And I've been on my own deathbed on 2 occasions in this life alone. I've faced and welcomed death with open arms, as it welcomes you. Not as some demon, some dark skeletal figure wielding a scythe to take your soul, but as a loving guide stepping you back into the reality that you're instantly reborn again into your being. You are this highly powerful spiritual being who never has been born, never will die, and will be evolving and growing consciously for all of eternity and loving every minute of it. Learning to love it here. Learning to be in this world but no longer of this world. That's the trick. It is not an escape. You know, there's a lot of people out there who talk about teachers like Eckhart Tolle and say, well, you know, they're leading people astray. It's some sort of escapism. It is not escapism. Our thoughts and perceptions govern our reality. Our thoughts and perceptions create our reality, both at an individual level, at a familial level, at a societal level, at a community level, at a provincial, national, global level. Every one of our consciousnesses is contributing to the reality that we're creating. And the issue is most of us are doing it unconsciously. Most of us are not paying attention. And because of that, we suffer. I'm going to let everyone think on that for a minute or two. And as I do that, I'm going to bring in a little bit of Kelly's music for a few minutes. And the picture of the candle as well, I think, if I can find it. There we go. And we'll let her music run for a minute or two, and we will be right back. Stay tuned, more to come. I'm gonna have to do some work with that sun coming in the window. I can see it's just a little bit too bright. Actually, maybe, honey, could you pull the curtains shut a little bit there? Just on the back side there, that back panel that's on the back, just a little bit. So we're back again. Just wanted to leave that candle with you for a minute or two, and my wife's Kelly piano, and we're going to be producing more of that as time goes by. And really looking forward to that. That's for sure. She's a beautiful piano player. So as we were talking, it's Sunday, and there's I try not to get too much into the bottom line is wherever we are at as a civilization and at individuals, it is perfect. It is right where we need to be in order to evolve, in order to take that next step. There is no end point for us as a civilization. There is no, final goal. Evolution, life is a non-stop cyclical process of ever-increasing growth upwards. Ever-increasing levels of organization and complexity, but yet all very simple at the same time. Yeah, I can see we're definitely going to have to do a little work with the light, and we will deal with that and come up with a little bit of a solution. Again, my name is Garhen, and we've reached about the halfway mark today, and I do want to invite anybody who needs some help or advice. We're going to have this session available for 1 hour every Sunday from 10 to 11 Pacific Standard Time, and on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is the same time as Vancouver or Los Angeles, for those of you who are using some international time zone applications. We are actually in Armstrong, British Columbia, and we are still, despite the sunlight out there and the blue sky, it was cold this morning. It was about -3. Couldn't see 20 feet in front of you with the fog and the mist, and we still have a lot of snow. It's a late spring this year. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about what religion actually does, and this is the issue with any religion that claims to have the only way. It really does. There's no such thing as the only way. Every single one of us is on the way. Every single one of us is on the path. We're all on the same path. All of us. And the end is never in doubt. Never in doubt. Returning to that sea of consciousness, remanifesting over and over and over again. This wonderful existence and this conscious evolution of spirit manifested as a relative universe. We are the edifice of this glorious evolution and part of it. Each piece evolving in its own independence and interdependence with each other piece, with each other part of that whole. The magnificence of it, to even begin to comprehend it, is that's about it. It's just, yeah, it's a fantastic feeling inside. Why would you wish to cling to a so-called loving God that will burn you in hell for all eternity for not accepting his son, whom he sent to fix his mistake? You see, apparently the whole of humanity was blamed when indeed the Creator made us defective, apparently. He admitted it. He even said, I screwed up. I wish I'd never made humanity, apparently. And I guess in his despotic need to have humans worship him, after, all the fire and brimstone and floods and plagues and everything else, he decided, well, now I'll send my kid, and if you accept him, I'll forgive you for my mistake. Because I love you, and you have free choice, and the alternative is hell. Yeah, I'm not seeing a deal there. I'm really not. Anytime a religion claims it has the way, the one way, that religion is no longer glorifying anything except separation. You all turn into these little judgmental people that run around and say, well, you're going to hell and you're not, and I love you, you poor child, but you're going to rot. And the list goes on and on and on. And I watch my wife sit here, shunned by her entire family. Why? Because she has grown in conscious awareness and can no longer accept the lies that she's been sold her entire life. I remember a discussion my wife had about 3 years ago, and it was a tough one for her because I was listening to an Enigma song, and the song is speaking to what these missionaries have done to First Nations peoples all over the planet. And Kelly comes from a long history of missionaries, and we got into a real discussion about it, and I said, yeah, the attitude of most missionaries is, you poor people, you need my help. You're godless. The reason you're suffering and living in the conditions you are is because you're godless, and you need God in your lives. The first missionaries brought disease and decimated First Nations peoples by the tens and hundreds of thousands. The other missionaries brought the lies, the greed, the stealing of children and lifestyle, and pain and suffering. This was the God that you introduced. And this is the God you still try to profess to have faith in today. Why? Because it gives you an excuse for your behavior. Now, understand this. I am not bashing the organization as a whole that reaches out to the homeless, that reaches out to feed people in need. But at the same and by the same token, that which you do out of so-called compassion does not measure up against that which you do that causes the issues. And you are part of the problem, a big part of the problem. Every war, every argument between nations has always come down to whose God is bigger, whose God is better, whose God is more righteous, whose people are more righteous, who are the chosen people. Every single one of them. They all come back to that point. Christians, Muslims, Jews, the three major religious faiths, you of all people around this planet could put an end to the separation. Your leaders could finally admit the truth of it, that there is no hell. Where could evil exist within a God of love that is all things? What a sad mistaken interpretation to think that God made man in his image. What a sad interpretation instead of the truth that the creative sea of consciousness manifested humankind as one of the many expressions of itself, infused with all the same glorious power and capability as the sea of consciousness. But no. That positive, uplifting doctrine would not allow you to judge anymore. Wouldn't allow you to hold your holier-than-thou high ground. You know, when we were listening to Carlton, and we've listened to him a few times, again, my wife really likes listening to Carlton Pearson, and she has a long history, you know, including way down in Tulsa, where she went to Bible school. And Carlton was speaking about the current condition of the church. Churches everywhere, Christian churches as a whole. There's a reason your membership is dropping. There's a reason why we keep hearing more and more at the health hut that we stop down at, that more and more older Christians are stopping by the store and starting to ask about alternative things outside of Christianity, more spiritual ideas. They're tired of the lies of the church. Anytime you've made an institution, anytime you've taken something and institutionalized it, you're no longer focused on the reason why it was formed to start with. You're now focused only on the institution's survival. It becomes a bureaucracy. You know, one day this past summer, I personally talked to the 26 some odd local churches around here. Personally talked to every single one of them and said, we all need to get together. And as the spiritual community, get down into the park that's full of homeless people and raise the sort of noise that lets the public and the government know that the spiritual community stands as one and that this can no longer continue. How many of those 26 churches who proclaim the gospel as they do you think showed up? Not one. And the reason why? Because they weren't the ones who were going to grab the headline. I didn't even want my name shown. I'd rather not have been there at all. I'm not really big on public appearances. It's never about the messenger. It's about the message. But we like to make it about the messenger because that's very convenient. Then we don't have to actually deal with the message. We can just focus on the messenger. And I've got news for you, all you Christians out there. You've really confused the message. Christ did not want soldiers. He was a man of peace. Not the first Roman emperor, but it was a Roman emperor in 300 AD who wanted Christian soldiers. Prior to that, no Christian would kill anyone else. Why? Because that's what Christ said not to do. Now, Christian pastors, priests, bless the troops. Yep, go out there and kill in the name of God. Well, Constantine set that up right around 300 AD, and it's been going ever since. Christ came as all the enlightened beings have come and keep coming to our planet over and over and over again to show humanity that we can be so much more, that we are so much more than what we've been convinced we are. It's time to choose. The damage you have done to this planet and to society as a whole can be repaired. There's no blame, only responsibility. You know, I would call on every church leader, every leader of every faith, including the Pope, to look at your own history, to see how a doctrine of separation, a doctrine of our way or the highway to hell, has caused despair, pain, and suffering. And again, I'm not knocking the good deeds you do. But really, it's like us carpet bombing an entire city and then rebuilding the hospitals and saying, hey, look at us. We built you new hospitals. It's really no difference. You keep carpet bombing civilization with this false doctrine that we're separate, that we're not enough, that we're evil to start with, and no good and unworthy, and that the only way to be good is to accept a cosmic space zombie and ceremoniously drink his blood and eat his flesh. And then we're going to be okay. And we can keep behaving the same way we always do. We just have to make sure every time we show up on Sunday that we ask forgiveness. And pray we don't die on a Friday night. Apparently. I'm sorry. That's not the God our world needs anymore. That's not the God our world wants anymore. In droves, people are leaving the church. I know, I've seen it. It's harder and harder and harder for you to make ends meet. And I see the old rhetoric coming out, signs that Christ is coming back. Don't worry, it's almost upon us. You would bring Armageddon to the planet and suffering. Why? So that you could see yourself brought up into heaven while all the other men, women, and children who didn't believe the way you do get to burn in a lake of molten fire. Ask yourself if this represents love. Ask yourself if that represents a loving God. You know, the biggest help people need, the absolute largest thing to get by, is the idea that you are not a whole, powerful being here with purpose, because you are. You came here. You chose your parents for the unique set of circumstances that were going to form the foundation of your egoic being, your personality here on this planet. And you have a gift to offer the world. There's something that you came here to do. You are not evil. No matter what you believe, you are loved. And you are one of the whole of humanity. And you can never be separate from your Creator. And you will never wind up in a place called hell. Hell exists in your mind. Hell is what we have managed to create here for so many people as we proclaim our own holiness behind those stained glass windows every Sunday. While the rest of the week we go along behaving like the rest. Except for us, we're always looking from our little higher point of view, right? I've got the inside track. Our church has the only way. The arrogance to think that out of 7.5 billion people, the small number of you would have the only truth. We live in an ever-changing, ever-growing, ever-evolving universe. We as human beings are not static creatures. We are evolving one step at a time, sometimes in little leaps. Every once in a while, someone bursts right out of the mold. Christ, Buddha are examples of these people. And there are many more. Some of them choose to sit quietly in monasteries and try to hold a positive vibration for the whole of humanity, constantly putting out love and compassion to all, every moment of every day. This is the true religion. If we must have religion, my religion is the whole of humanity, the whole of creation, one glorious whole. No one less, no one more, no one everyone special, everything special, everything holy. Think about this. Again, the purpose of this will be to answer any questions, to serve, to give advice, and to help to anyone in need. And we will be here every Sunday between 10 and 11 Pacific Standard Time, and every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Much love to you. Again, my name is Garhen, and you can visit our YouTube main channel page at Awaken the World. Also, our Help Awaken page, which this is being shot through as a live video, and of course, awakentheworld.ca, which has a number of informative articles and quite a few of the videos posted as well. Looks like we're going to wrap it up for this Sunday, and I do thank everyone who stopped by to take a look, who at least glanced at the post. This will take time to grow, and we're fully aware of that, and we're okay with that too. And happy Sunday to you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you missed this and you have a question, you need some comment, please leave us a comment after the fact. And we'll get in touch with you. And we'll certainly address it. Again, have a wonderful day. My name is Garhen, and we'll be signing off until Wednesday for the live help. Namaste.